Bhakti Vedanta Sevara Supa Kinda Jagati Vaishnava Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasubhuda Bhaktavinda Shri Radha Krishna Gopina Shamahunda Radha Kunda Devananda Vrindavan Madhuradam Navitam Gomgomayi Jai Yamunamayi Jai Turasi Devi Jai Bhakti Devi Jai Samvira Bhakti Jai Gora all glory to the Son of God, all glory to the Son of God, all glory to the Son of God, all glory to Shri Krishna, all glory to Shri Prabhupada. So around here, es ist Deutsch heute oder Englisch oder Englisch?
Well, some who speak Dutch, someone has to translate for me. I speak German, someone has to translate for me.
Sorry?
Someone will have to translate if you speak German, and someone will have to translate English for me.
The Dutch people don't speak English? Yes, English, yes.
He will give class in English.
Okay, that's good. Thank
So
you.
English?
Yeah.
So around here we are accustomed to read from the Transcendental Diary, Travels for His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, by Hari Sari Prabhu. So Srila Prabhupada is still in Vrindavan. The second verse he described how Arjuna set all pursuit. The second verse he describing how Arjuna set off in pursuit of Avatama. Fully. Kannst du meine andere Brille bitte?
Ja, mach ich noch was.
Das ist ein grüner Umschlag.
Grüne Umschlag, ja.
Moment. Okay. I'm sorry, I have to change my glasses. The second verse he described how Arjuna set off in pursuit of Avatama, fully armed and with the Supreme Lord Krishna driving his chariot. In this verse, Krishna is called Achyuta, the infallible, and so Prabhupada began by condemning the Mayavadis who falsely speculate that God falls into the material world and becomes an ordinary jiva. He pointed out that our position and Krishna's is vastly different. Although we are part and parcel of God, Mamayivang Sajiva Bhuta, because we have Achyuta, we have Chuta, fallen down from our spiritual atmosphere. Just like spiritual atmosphere, Krishna's friends, cowherd boys, they're playing with Krishna. That is also playing. And here in the material world, the boys, they also play football play. But these two plays are different. One is spiritual and the other is material. Using the familiar example of a spark and the fire. Prabhupada explained the difference between us and God. When we fall down from the fire, spiritual world, we associate with three qualities. Purusha prakriti stohi bhunte prakriti jamhunan. This is a statement of the Bhagavad Gita. In the prakriti, in this material world, there are three modes of material nature. Sattva-guna, Rajaguna, Tamaguna. So there is chance. When you fall down, you can fall down anywhere. a spark falls from the original fire, so it can fall down on dry grass, it can fall down on the water, it can fall down on the ground. There are three chances. Similarly, when the living entity, originally part and parcel of God, the same quality, not the same quantity, just like spark and fire. They are same quality, but not the same quantity. Fire is very big, therefore the big fire is Achyuta. It is never degraded, but the small fire is degraded. So when Krishna comes, big fire comes. He is not degraded, he is Achyuta. Because people are rascals, he said, they cannot understand the true nature of Krishna's activities. So many rascals, they think that Krishna's dealing with the gopis is the same as one young boy plays with other young girls. No, they are different. Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Patibhavi. This dealing in this material world between young boys and girls, they are material. They are simply a reflection of the original dealings. This verse in the Vedanta Sutra, Janmanya Sagata, from Brahman, everything is emanating. Without being in Brahman, nothing can be manifested or existing within this world. So these loving affairs between young girls and young boys is Zen Brahman. That is the dealing of Krishna and the gopis. So that dealing is pervertedly reflected within the material world. It is not the same thing, it is different. He warned us that although there is the greatest benefit to be had by hearing about Krishna's pastimes, one has to be very highly qualified to comprehend them. It is so nice that actually if one hears about the dealings of the gopis and Krishna, then he becomes so elevated in devotion that he forgets the lusty dealings between men and women. That is the result. It is stated in the Bhagavatam, Bhakti Pratilabhya Abhihunoti Kaman. If one is eligible to hear the dealings of gopis and Krishna, the result will be he forgets the lusty desires of this material world. Therefore, it is not for all. These dealings of gopis and Krishna is meant for the liberated person. They can hear, not the ordinary persons. Therefore, this Krishna Lila is given in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So don't jump over. First of all, you try to understand Krishna, Achyuta. To understand Krishna, the Bhagavad Gita is the ABC. And Srimad Bhagavatam begins when one is actually Krishna conscious. Sarvadamam parijajam mam ekadamam bhaja. Sarvadamam parijajam mam ekam. Then Srimad Bhagavatam begins. So don't jump over to the Krishna Lila or jump over to Radha Kunda unless you are a liberated person. This is the instruction, Achyuta. You must be also Achyuta, not falling down from the standard of pure devotional service. Right? Any questions, comments? Yes, so actually, Prabhupada mentioned that everything has its origin in the spiritual world. You know, why young girls and young boys fall in love? Because this principle also exists in the spiritual world. But as Prabhupada says here, this is actually very different. One is material, or temporary, and contaminated by the most of material nature. And whereas in the spiritual world, everything is pure. And everything is based on pure love. No bhakti, pure love for the Supreme Personality of God. Anyway, any more comments, questions? So we continue with Srimad Bhagavatam. So we continue with Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, 2nd chapter, text 1. Vishnu Vida Kriyo Mulo Yakyo Dharma Yakuman Divarshi Pitri Bhutanam Dharmasya Chakparayanam Vishnu Vida Kriya Mulo Yakyo Dharma Yakuman Devashi Pitri Bhutanam Dharmasya Chakparayanam
Vishnu Dvija Kriyamulo Dharma Maya Puna Devashri Pitri Bhutana Dharmasya Chaparayana Vishnu Dvija Kriyamulo Yodharma Maya
Which verse is this, please?
7 to 11.
Oh, 11.
Vishnu Dvija Kriyamulo Yashno Dharma Maya Punakuman Devashri Pitri Bhutanam Dharmasya Chakparayanam Vishnu Dvija Kriyamulo
Vishnu, Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Dvija of the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas. Kriyamula, whose root is the performance of yajna. And the ritualistic ceremonies mentioned in the Vedas. Yajna, personified yajna. Lord Vishnu was known as Yajna Purusha. Dharmamaya, full of religious principles. Kuman, the Supreme Person. Devashi, of the demigods and great rishis. Like Vyasadeva and Narada. Pitri, of the forefathers. Bhutanam, of all the other living entities. Dharmasya, of the religious principles. Cha, Parayanam, also Parayanam, the shelter. Translation. The basic principles of Brahminical culture is to satisfy Lord Vishnu the personification of sacrificial ritualistic ceremonies. Lord Vishnu is a personified reservoir of all religious principles, and he is the shelter of all the demigods, the great Pitas, and the people in general. When the Brahmanas are killed, no one will exist to encourage the Kshatriyas to perform yajnas, and thus the demigods, not being appeased by yajna, will automatically die. Since Vishnu is the central point of Brahminical culture, Hiranyakashipu's plan to kill Vishnu, for if Vishnu were killed, naturally the Brahminical culture would also be lost. With Brahminical culture lost, yajna would no longer be performed. And for want of yajna, the regular distribution of rainfall would cease. Yat bhavati parjanha. Thus, there would be disturbances all over the world, and naturally the demigods would be defeated. From this verse, we get a clear indication of how human society is disturbed when the Vedic Aryan civilization is killed, and the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies performed by the Brahmanas are stopped. Kalaushu dasambhava. Because the population of the modern world consists mostly of Shudras, the Brahminical culture is now lost and it's extremely difficult to re-establish in a proper way. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya has recommended the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, which will receive Brahminical culture very easily. Which will revive Brahminical culture very easily. Harinama, 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 Kevalam, Kalau, Naskeva, 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 Latidanyata. Because of the increment in demonic population, people have lost Brahminical culture, nor is there a Kshatriya government. Instead, the government is a democracy in which any Shudra can be voted into taking up the governmental reins and capture the power to rule. Because of the poisonous effect of Kali Yuga, the Shastra, Bhagavatam 12:2-13 says, Dasyu Prayeshu Rajasu. The government will adopt the policies of Dasyus, of plunderers. Thus, there will be no instructions from the Brahmanas. And even if there are Brahminical instructions, there will be no Kshatriya rulers who can follow them. Aside from Satya Yuga, even formerly in the days when demons were flourishing, Hiranyakashipu planned to destroy the Brahminical culture and the Kshatriya government and thus create chaos all over the world. Although in Satya Yuga, this plan was very difficult to execute, in Kali Yuga, which is full of Shudras and demons, the Brahminical culture is lost and can be revived only by the chanting of the Maha Mantra. Therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement, or the Hare Krishna movement, has been inaugurated to revive Brahminical culture very easily, so that people may become happy and peaceful in this life and prepare for elevation in the next. In this regard, Srila Madhvacharya quotes this verse from the Brahmana Purana. Viprayakyadimudam tu hari iti asuram matam hari deva hi sarvasya mulam samyan maton dripa. O king, the demons think that Hari, Lord Vishnu, exists because of the Brahmanas and Yajna. But factually, Hari is the cause of everything, including Brahmanas and Yajna. Therefore, through the popularization of Hari Kirtan or the Sankirtan movement, the Brahminical culture and Kshatriya movement will automatically come back and people will be extremely happy. Vishnu Divijakriya Mulo Yakyudharma Hayapuman Devarshi Pitri Bhutanam Dharmasya Chaparayanam. The basic principle of Brahminical culture is to satisfy Lord Vishnu, the personification of sacrificial and ritualistic ceremonies. Lord Vishnu is a personified reservoir of all religious principles, and he is the shelter of all the demigods, the great Pitas, and the people in general. When the Brahmanas are killed, no one will exist to encourage the Kshatriyas to perform yajnas, and thus the demigods, not being appeased by yajna, will automatically die. So, it's mentioned in the first line of the verse about the importance of Brahminical culture. Brahminical culture. In former times, there was a Varnashramadana system, very nicely functioning. And like Bhagavatam says, the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas are the most important members of society. And also, actually, Bhagavatam mentioned once that in due course of time, real Brahmanas will manifest, and Kshatriyas also. They're the real leaders of society. We see nowadays all these governments are all over the place. They're just coming either from the mercantile, business section of society, or from the shooters. Just like in America nowadays, a big problem because they don't have a proper president. He's completely unqualified to lead the public. Anyway, so the Brahmanas are supposed to be qualified. Like I mentioned the other day, the Brahmanas actually go into all the different varnas. Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. And the Kshatriyas going up to Vanaprastha. And the Vaishyas, the Brahmacharis and Grihasthas. And the Shudras are just Grihasthas, married people. So this all has its order. And this order is not something like we are used to nowadays, creative, invented, or speculative. It's actually coming down. Arodhapanta, Arodhapanta. There's two kinds of knowledge. There's Arodhapanta. This means ascending knowledge, and Avarodhapanta, descending knowledge. So we used to the knowledge, the ascending knowledge. They think that one day they will come to the perfect state, perfect knowledge. But their knowledge will always be defective. Why? Because they're conditioned souls. Conditioned souls, they have limited senses. They commit all kinds of errors on the basis of their mental sensory limitations. Speculation, errors, and then illusion. They create all kinds of erroneous conceptions, erroneous points of view. And then also, the last quality, also very important, disqualification, is that they have the tendency to cheat. Actually, Prabhupada used to say that whatever speculation is cheating. I think, maybe, maybe not. And Srila Prabhupada was actually very strict. And sometimes in the presence of Srila Prabhupada, when the Buddha said, I think, Prabhupada immediately called his attention. Don't speculate. Prabhupada was very strict with this question. If you don't know, don't say anything. Or admit that you don't know. Be honest. But Avarodhapanta is different. It descends from the perfect platform, perfect. That means Krishna. The original authority or the original knower of things is Krishna. He's the creator. Just like when you buy a machine, a complicated, sophisticated machine, you always get a manual along with it. And if you read the manual, you know how to work it. I just mentioned it the other day. That Krishna gave us his manual in the form of the Bhagavatam. What this is all about. What is the purpose of this creation? What is what that we should achieve? How to say? Erreichen. What is that in English? Yeah, what we should achieve. And actually, like Krishna tells us in the Bhagavad Gita, the human form of life is meant for self-realization. It's meant for God realization. Why is this? Because this actually helps us to stop the repetition of birth and death. Now, this is only possible where, as long as we are in the human form of life. The problem is that we go from body to body to body. Sometimes, whatever. There's a great variety of bodies, material bodies. 8,400,000, and only very few are human life forms. And this human life form is very, very special because it gives us a chance to liberate ourselves from the cycle of birth and death, and to correct our situation. Prabhupada used to say that material consciousness means diseased. And Prabhupada mentioned that just like when you have a disease, you go to the doctor, and the doctor makes his diagnosis, how is it in English? Okay. Diagnosis? Yes. Mundane, materialistic doctors have their way, and Ayurvedic doctors have another way. It seems to be more profound, more complete, because it's a Veda. It's also asset, it's descending knowledge. And as soon as the doctor has diagnosed it, he gives you recommendations. He gives you some medicine, or he gives you a program. Actually, we can see that you get disease mostly due to ignorance, because you're sinful and you don't know how to act properly with your body, in harmony with nature. So that means, in the mode of ignorance, you get disease. And the cause is ignorance. Then the passion, all the things start manifesting. And in the mode of goodness, you become healthy again. And that's why, we also have the same principle. Now, Srila Prabhupada gave us two things: the Four Regulative Principles and the chanting of the holy name. So that following the principles, that we should be ubicated, situated properly in the mode of goodness. Mode of goodness. Actually, these four principles are nothing spiritual. It just helps us to establish our trust in the mode of goodness. And then the chanting. The chanting of the holy names, like Prabhupada mentioned here, Harinama, 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 Devana, Sevana, Sevana, Prabhupada mentions here, in the middle of all this chaos and all this disaster, confusion, the Lord gives us processes, yuga dharmas, to come out of this illusion, to cure ourselves. And it's mentioned here, Hiranyakashipu. Actually, Hiranyakashipu lived in the Satyajit. Ravana was killed by Rama in Treta Yuga. And Shishupal and Tantavakra were killed in the end of Dwapara Yuga. And it's actually, Bhagavatam says, that the Lord would appear in Kali Yuga with a different foretellings, predictions, different predictions. It says that the Lord would come, accompany, he would dance and chant the holy names. He would come as our Krishna, not black, not dark, and those who had sufficient brain would worship him. And it says he not only would appear with associate with his eternal associates and assistants like this, but he would also come with astra. You know, like whenever Krishna comes, he comes also with weapons. Yeah, weapons. But well, Krishna, Narayan, comes with 2 weapons and 2 objects of giving benedictions. Whereas Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his weapon was a chanting of the holy name. Turning, by this weapon he would turn, the demonic mentalities, the demonic hearts, purify them, without killing them. Very powerful process. Anyway, so the descending knowledge, Avarodha Pandita, is very much different. And we can see that practically. We should always learn how to judge everything by the result. When Prabhupada came to America, in the beginning, Prabhupada came on alone. Actually, he came to America, New York, the center of Kali Yuga practically. And even though he was alone in the beginning, and Prabhupada started chanting in public, or invited people to come and hear his chanting, and they actually experienced a change in heart. A change in heart. And that's actually the symptom, that the process of devotional service, of chanting Hare Krishna, is actually effective. It's very effective. We can see it. All over the world, people have experienced a change in heart. So even though Prabhupada was all alone in the beginning, actually there was, somebody asked Prabhupada once if he didn't feel alone in New York in the beginning. And Prabhupada said, I never felt alone. I said, I never felt alone. No, that's term in English, I don't remember. Loneliness, yeah, loneliness. I never felt, I always feel accompanied by my spiritual master. Just like there's 2 ways of associating with the spiritual master. Vaku, the association, direct association, personal association with the spiritual master. In the beginning, devotees used to have this association with Prabhupada. And I remember when I became a devotee, Prabhupada was used to get letters from us. And sometimes he even asked, why doesn't he write? And then in due course, I mentioned this several times already, in due course of time, a letter appeared in all the temples. As the movement started growing, on the secretary. And the secretary informed us not to write letters to Srila Prabhupada anymore, that we rather should try to solve our problems with our Guru Prabhupada. I remember that letter created quite some attention. And I remember they even started thinking that this was actually the politics that the devotees surrounding Srila Prabhupada had made. But actually, as the movement grew more and more, so many devotees appeared in due course of time. Actually, from my limited point of view, I remember in the beginning, the association with Srila Prabhupada more frequent, more personal. Then Srila Prabhupada kind of moved himself out of the picture. We saw Prabhupada from far away. We were not allowed to go on morning walks with him anymore. And not only very selected devotees would go out on morning walks with Srila Prabhupada. His GBCs and his sannyasis and devotees who carrying big responsibilities like that. And then, in the end, when Prabhupada had retired himself to Vrindavan and was very sick, very conditioned by his body health. It's amazing when you see the last videos, especially the last one, the last lecture of Japan. All kinds of people with surrounding Prabhupada. I even heard that sometimes people came directly from the street. And the children were there with their Prabhupada. They were massaged, different children were massaging to their Prabhupada at the same time. Yeah. Anyway, so there's I just remember one other thing. In the end, Prabhupada was in Mandala. His godbrothers also came to see him. And Prabhupada started asking, I say, pardon,
Forgiveness.
forgiveness for his offenses that he had committed against him. And they said, oh no, you can't commit any offenses. And there was one godbrother, I don't remember his name. We saw him sometimes in Mayapur also. He came with Sri Prabhupada, even he was in Mayapur. But there was one thing that he didn't do. Whenever they offered him prasadam, he didn't want to take it because it was done by Muslims. And anyway, so he also came at the last moment. He went down to see Sri Prabhupada. And he said, is there anything I can do for you? And Prabhupada said, yes, eat the prasadam that my disciples have cooked. Anyway, so Sri Prabhupada was not feeling alone in New York, as I mentioned, because he had the relation with the spiritual advisor by running, by instructions. Actually, this instruction is even more important. Because this, like I mentioned, the association with spiritual master, like most, even nowadays, most of our spiritual masters, the sannyasis, they're traveling all the time. There's disciples and places where hardly comes, who hardly visits, like that. But the instructions are actually what is connecting us with our spiritual master. Just like Prabhupada, he got the instruction of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, when they met for the first time, when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati saw Prabhupada and his friend, actually his friends had pushed him to go and see Prabhupada. Prabhupada didn't want to go. But and that Prabhupada mentioned once that amongst his friends he had always been a leader. So when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Guru became very known in India and Bengal, his friends also wanted to know his opinion about Bhaktisiddhanta. But he didn't want to go. No, he said, so many so-called saintly persons came to my father's house. He had invited them and all that, and asked them to give me benediction. So he was not very interested. But they pushed, and finally he went with a friend. And when they entered, when they came to the place where Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was, it says in the Lilamrita, it says that at that time Bhaktisiddhanta was sitting on the rooftop, how is it? Terrace, speaking to people. And as soon as he saw the two young boys, he stopped talking and looked at them. And immediately told them, you are intelligent young boys. Why don't you take the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to the West, preach in English? And at that time, we all know, Prabhupada started arguing with Bhaktisiddhanta. He said, actually, nobody will take us serious in the West because our country is dominated by the British. We are just a colony. And we better liberate India before we go. At that time, Prabhupada was a follower of Mahatma Gandhi. Anyway, so Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati immediately refuted this argument. He said, these political things, these are all temporary, not so important things. This mission is much more important. And Prabhupada was impressed. And then when they left the place, his friend asked him, so what do you think? What is your opinion? And Prabhupada said, I think that this movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is now very good hands. And then it's mentioned when he left, he was very impressed by Bhakti Siddhanta and started associating with his disciples. And while associating with his disciples, he heard more and more about the activities, the wonderful activities of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. And then after a while, Baba continued with when he had his own business at the end. First he had, I say, kind of director job, post. But then he made his own business. And there's one book of his lady discipleship, Buddha Prakriti. She wrote a book. She made a lot of interviews. How do you say interviews? Interviews with, how do you say this in English? People who lived at the same time, temporary.
Contemporary.
The contemporaries. And not only the sannyas, the leaders of the Gaudiya, actually more people who were not leaders in the ISKCON movement at that time. And so, she collected very nice interviews, made a whole book out of it. And I remember one point was somebody was telling her, yes, I knew him. He said in his pharmacy, he had a pharmacy, private pharmacy, and most of the time he was sitting and reading a big book. And when people would come in, he would start speaking to them about these things. Anyway, so then after a while, we all, most of us know that Srila Prabhupada wrote a letter to Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. And he told him, well, I'm a Grihastha, and something else he said, and then he said, please tell me how I can serve you. And that's actually very, very interesting. How I can serve you. This is actually the conclusion of our inquisitiveness. Yes. You come to the conclusion, how can I serve? How can you serve this person? And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati repeated the exact instruction. And he mentioned something else, what caught my attention, I think. He said, this will be good for the people and will be good for you. Preaching. The Prabhupada said, preaching is the essence. And it's a very, very powerful service to preach. Actually, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, the person who preaches for his devotees will become very, very dear, and there will be nobody, dearer to him than the person who preaches. This is actually our mission. Like I mentioned this many times. Like when we become devotees, we learn how to follow the principles, chant the holy name, engage in some different services in the temple and all that. But actually, Srila Prabhupada expected more from us. Prabhupada expected that we take part in his mission. Prabhupada had a mission, not just to save oneself, but actually take part of the mission of Srila Prabhupada. The mission is that we should distribute and preach, make people know about the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is actually most important. There's so, like I always mention, there's so many places where people have never heard the holy name, but they have never received the book, they have never seen the devotion. Here in Germany also. Actually, at the time when Hansa Buddha was here, when Prabhupada was still there, we opened so many temples. We had many more temples here in Germany. And there were many more devotees, many devotees. Now we only have a few temples here. We have Köln, Berlin, but Berlin, as far as I know, there are very restricted programs there. In Hamburg also, we had temples in Ulm, we had temples in Stuttgart, so many different places. Anyway, so preaching, when we preach, Naturally people come. Naturally people become interested. They want to know what this is all about. Yes. I remember Prabhupada, I had opened a temple here in Germany, in the town of Prabhupada. And Hans Buddha told me, tell Prabhupada, write him a letter. And then I wrote a letter explaining how we opened the temple and all that. And then Prabhupada answered, and he said, now you are a leader. Now you have to be exemplary. And he mentioned Mangal Arti, he mentioned different things. And he also mentioned you have to go out every day to preach. At that time, we only had one book in German, Ishopanishad. Now we have so many more books. But at that time, when I started the temple in München, we had nothing. Only a few, Zurück zur Gottheit, back to Godhead. A few pages stamped together like that. Yeah. So Prabhupada said, no, now you have become a leader. Now you have to give an example. And I remember that. Yeah? I went out with the devotees. We normally chanted and we said each Upanishad. And then I came back in the morning before I left. Before we went out, I normally make lists of things to be done. And then when we came back, I came back a little earlier, and I started crossing many of these things. After having been out chanting or something like that. So many things became less important. Anyway, so Paul wanted us to do that we should be exemplary. Whatever a great man does, Krishna says in the Bhagavatam, common man will follow. Just like Prabhupada. Some time back I had to give a public speech during Ratha Yatra, and I mentioned a story about Prabhupada. And I told them, because at that place, it's far away from here, that yoga has become very, very extremely popular among people. And they have to pay for yoga, like here also. Also familiar with Jagannath. Anyway, and I told them, our spiritual master never charged anything. He just taught us, how to live life properly in Krishna consciousness, and he never charged anything. And we were very surprised, and we looked at him, really? Of course, we know that when you become a devotee, Krishna starts to give, obviously Krishna gives more and more, whatever you need. And actually, I remember from Christian times, there's also this instruction of Jesus Christ to his disciples. They should go out and preach. Without a shelter, with having a shelter, without a second shirt like that. Just look like the lilies. They don't, what was that? Lilies and something else. They don't work. And who maintains them? The Supreme Personality of God. And that's what Prabhupada showed us also. When Prabhupada came to the West, he came only with 40 rupees. And that was like $7 at that time. Only 40 rupees. And I heard when Prabhupada went back to India, he still had the 40 rupees. There's a diary that Srila Prabhupada had in New York in his first temple. He had a diary. He said, somebody gave $2. And I spent on post stamp, how is it post stamp? I spent 30 cents, that kind of thing. And then, of course, everything in an inconceivable way. This movement started all over. And we had the same experience, how Krishna actually maintains his devotion. If we actually follow as we expected to follow, we don't have to worry about our maintenance or anything. Krishna will be. And Krishna also says about this. I give you everything you need, and I protect you. I said, protect, and I protect. Anyway, so I went off a little bit here from the verse, but maybe there's some questions or some commentary, some thoughts, or something that caught your attention maybe. Keine Fragen? Oh, yeah. You asked a nice question the other day. I remember that. Yeah, and former times so many devotees would join, and you said that nowadays hardly anybody comes, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway.
It's further the same thing. It seemed like within the Vaishnava tradition or even in Hinduism, this act of preaching was not a common thing. To go out of your way to preach to someone seemed more like a Christian thing. How did Prabhupada stand out in such a way compared to other gurus from the East in terms of getting followers? What made Prabhupada different than those other gurus?
Actually, all our acharyas, like the Sampradaya acharyas, they're all preaching. This idea to, that, of course, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left, or when Krishna left, actually Prabhupada mentioned that many times, that so many deviations and people started speculating how come he gave us the order to surrender completely to him. And they started, I say, commentating, speculating about the Bhagavad Gita. And Prabhupada mentioned that after Krishna had left, Krishna came back again in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to teach us how to follow. Sarvadhamma Palicha Dhammam Vikantra, how to follow that. Giving his own example. Krishna also preached. All the great personalities, they were preaching. They were preoccupied, preoccupied. They're feeling compassion, wanting to help. This idea of just retiring, like it's mentioned when Bhakti appeared, as he sort of said. There were no Vaishnava preachers. They were just retired. How say it in English? Like going to the forest or living in holy places. And abstaining from associating with outsiders because that's not their low class. I don't want to contaminate myself. So when Bhakti Vinod Thakur started looking for a spiritual master, and he was looking for authorized, authentic texts, they were not there. And it took years until he found a bowl of authentic Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and all that. And he felt a great necessity to preach, to distribute this knowledge. He started preaching, printing. He found all Shastras that had disappeared practically. Also it mentions Chaitanya Charitamrita. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was traveling in the south, he came to the Adikesha temple. What's the name of the temple? Anyway, so they were dancing, and the floor broke. And they discovered there was Shastra under the floor. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu investigated. He said, "This is Bhagavatam. This is the 5th chapter." What is it? The 5th chapter of Bhagavatam. Actually, many more originally. And there was another Shastra. I don't remember the name. Yeah. So he had a copy, brought it with it, disciples about the importance of these two scriptures, especially Brahma Samhita. Brahma Samhita. Power also cited so much Brahma Samhita. There's so many recordings where Power is chanting Brahma Samhita, different melodies. Anyway, so we have a mission. We're supposed to develop Vaishnava principles. Tägliche Karunika, Sudhira Samadhi. That means we should. It says actually these are the qualities of the sadhu. The sadhu, the saintly person. The Tägliche was tolerant. Tägliche Karuna, compassionate. Actually, we should be compassionate. Saintly person can tolerate to see others suffer. Contribute. How do you contribute? Contribute with something to happen. Prabhupada also. Prabhupada translated all these books out of compassion, actually. Of course, nowadays it's not accepted that nowadays they have this concept to be compassionate. You give something to eat, you give some clothes to the people, and all that. The values they say this is all temporary. Whereas our contribution, our help, they said we give them knowledge to solve the problems in the, race, and the root cause of all this suffering. And this is only possible by knowledge, transcendental knowledge, the power of God. That's why these books are so important. When nowadays, I notice that sometimes in Sunday feast or something, when we ask, how did you come here? Even devotees, how did you come? How did you come in devotee? Most of the people say, oh, I received the book. Where are you from? England?
No, Australia.
Australia. In Australia also, books? Are you receiving many books over there?
Yeah,
There was a time actually in Australia they didn't receive the books. They only had restaurants.
yeah, it's still the vibe. There's, restaurants, but the book.
You became a devotee by book?
Yeah, my mother gave me a book.
Yeah. She didn't read it, and she gave it to you, right?
Yeah.
There's a video about that. It shows how maybe you know. There's a video once made that the mother goes and shopping. She meets a boy. And he says a book. He's very insistent. Finally says, okay, to give the donation. And when she comes back, looks at it, doesn't understand anything, puts it on the table. And there's a clock in the I say, Ecke, what is that?
What?
No, corner of the video. And it goes ticking. So, and the son comes and, what is this, mother? And he starts reading, and tick, 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 tick. And finally he has some kind of association with devotees, and then BAM! No more hair. And also ending up distributing books. We had this program here in Germany during the time of Harikish. In Schloss Wettershausen, we had a big castle here in Germany. Not our property, but how to say, rented. And I remember Harikish pushed very much the distribution of books. Two programs. Distributing books and making devotees. And there was a time when Harikish came to the service of Bhakti, and they started sending all the new people from the different temples to this program. And I remember when we started educating the people, then I was waking up everybody and this and that. Every day we went on Harinam and all this. And then at the end of the week, when the Sankirtan would come back to the castle, Manidhara was the leader of the I know, it's not gonna anybody. You always say, is there anybody I can take now? No? I don't know, I went off, maybe.
No, no.
Yeah, that's a question.
Sometimes, you know.
There was a lot of adventure at that time. They were all young people. Nowadays, in so many places, you find young people, young devotees anymore. Only the children of the devotees. But that was actually a big adventure. You know? Young people were going to be so surprised by the spirit of the devotees, enthusiasm. You know, when we did the kirtans in Schloss Hellershof, you know, it was a big hall. You know, it was a castle, a big hall. And so when I came back, we made kirtan. At the end of the kirtan, we had blisters on our feet, you know, because it was a stone. How do you say? Heavy stone floor, no, in the church. Yeah. And Monday, you know, again, everyone went out. Yeah. And when you say it's so anymore, yeah.
About some, I want to say something.
Sorry?
I want to say something.
Yeah.
Is it sometimes now that it's when we along for some places actually I went to the city books, you know, Harinam, some kirtans, along actually. And time to time meeting some people. And even Prabhupada relatives sometimes.
Sorry?
Even Prabhupada relatives sometimes on some kirtans.
Some
Relatives to Prabhupada. Relatives to Prabhupada.
relatives.
Yeah, really, sometimes on some kirtan. I had actually, yeah. Some daughter of a nephew, something about like this actually. Yeah. And 1 year ago, something about, I've been in the, I don't remember exactly where, is it from Luxembourg, one woman, she was in the movement when Prabhupada is for the start, yeah?
How is it?
Yeah, and she really actually knows that nothing follow, nothing really. And I talked with her, I giving her book, and she said, I remember. She said, I remember. I've been there when this movement started actually. And he said, Hare Krishna, you know, Hare Krishna. And I think it's so really holy name is so influenced actually. What is she forgot really all actually. But she was in the movement at that time. But she even she was initiated for the first time something about. But she forgot all of things actually, you know, mind how it's working. But holy name, he so openly start to chanting holy name, you know, I was amazed really. Openly, people usually not, they were hesitating, when you ask him, but when you go to some kirtan, we're not maybe take books, you're asking him, Hare Krishna, please. And we're not for the start actually, we're not, don't know maybe something about, but she starts so openly chant Hare Krishna really actually, isn't, you know, it's like she coming back to the, again, the start of a movement really. And really, happiness is coming to me also, you know, some kirtan, sometimes going actually, it's like this, and it was really amazing really, how influencing.
Yeah, we had a kind of story also in Buenos Aires in Argentina, when we were talking in the temple there, and young people came, and one boy came with his girlfriend, and the girlfriend was for the family of Opus Dei. You know, Opus Dei is the extreme right of the Catholic Church. In South America, they're very religious still, Catholic. Anyway, so she went to the church and confessed, you know, to the priest behind the I say the forehang. Yeah, before behind the curtain. She said, something terrible has happened in our family. My daughter became a member of a sect. You know? And then the priest, he said, lady, what sect you talking about? And she said, oh, the worst of all, Hare Krishna. And the priest said, don't worry, this is actually a very good group. So the mother went home and called her daughter and told her, you know what the priest said? And then one of our devotees went to the church to talk to the priest. And the priest started telling him that actually when he was young, had been young, he had been a hippie and he went to America, he went to New York, and he participated in the first temple of Srila Prabhupada. He saw Prabhupada like this. And then he went back to Argentina. He came back to Argentina and became a priest. And he told the devotee, and I even read, I wrote something about the importance of the holy name also. Yeah. I had another experience. I was also distributing books in München. And at one time, I showed a book to an old man. And the old man said, "Oh, Prabhupada, I know Prabhupada." And so I asked him, "You know Prabhupada?" And then I found out he didn't mean our Prabhupada, he meant Bhakti Siddhanta. And then he actually, when Swami came to Germany, under the order of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, when Swami came and preached in Germany and Czechoslovakia and all these places. So, anyway, so we made an arrangement. So I went to visit him with Bhakti Bhagavatam, who were brahmacharis at the time. So we went to see him, and he told us a story, how he had met Swami Bhusana, how there was another, actually I think he was a professor, young professor, at one university in Leipzig or somewhere there. And so they became very interested, and Swami Bhusana took them to India. There's a famous picture of that.
Wow.
Yeah. The Bhakti Siddhanta, Swami Bhusana is sitting there, and his German bhaktas are sitting on the side. They put in turbans and everything. And on that same picture, there's also Prabhupada with a big, how do you say it?
Mustache.
Yeah, mustache like this, and dressed like a gentleman like that. So he told us how he went to India with Swami Bhusana, and then at one point, suddenly one became Sadananda Swami. You might have heard of him. Yeah? And the other one was he came from an aristocratic family actually. He has a fund, How do you say it? I don't understand English. Anyway, so he told us, at one point Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, I think it was the first Vyasa Puja that he reinstalled into our tradition. And he told us that he saw Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati sitting on a very high platform with a high seat like that, and his disciples were all worshipping him, and he told us he couldn't take that. He left, and he went back. Yeah. And he went to, actually, at one point, during the Second World War, the Germans, the Japanese, Italians, in India, they were all taken and put in camps. You could say like concentration camps, because they're fearing that these people would make sabotage against the British and whatever, the Allies. Anyway, so Sadananda Swami was also taken to one of these camps, and then he met Walter Eitlitz. I don't know if you heard about him. He's an author, he wrote many books about India, and he became a disciple of Sadananda, so he went to Sweden. And Sadananda Swami also, because they kicked him out there, so he also went to Sweden. And I remember in 70, I don't remember what year it was, 73. 1973. Prabhupada came to Sweden. We just celebrated that 2 years back. The visit of Srila Prabhupada in Sweden. All the disciples of Prabhupada who had been in Sweden, in Stockholm, they were invited. We went to. Anyway, so when Prabhupada was in Sweden, at one point, I was walking behind Srila Prabhupada. He was going down the stairs. And down there was Ajit and Begavan, the first Swedish devotees. And so Prabhupada asked so how is my godbrother, Sadananda Swami? And they said, oh, they told him, oh, his problem was his health, you know. And Prabhupada said, yes, he was ruined by his health. He was ruined by his health. Anyway, so in Germany they also had some experience at the time of the Nazis. Actually, they came in 36 or something. Yeah, Swami came. Yeah. Oh, when I was with this devotee, I was with this person who had come to India. When he showed us a lot of magazines, harmonists and all that, many letters that Swami had sent him, you know, telling him about the movement and all this. And then he showed us a prospect. Prospect? What is it? Prospect. Yeah? They had printed about Swami in Germany. There was a photo there that he was sitting in an organ in a big cathedral or something like that, surrounded by Germans. But these Germans, they were all kind of, you know, at the time of the Nazis, whenever you had an important post, like a director of a university or director of a school or something like that, they forced you to become a member of the NSDAP, of the party of the Nazi party. And you were obliged to use your uniform with the swastikas and all that.
I saw this photo, yeah. I saw this photo. I just wanted Swami it was. I saw some photo where it's sannyasi is standing with all around this him actually some
Nazis.
Yeah. This is this photo, yeah.
Yeah. So I asked him if he could give it to me, you know, for at least for some time, and I gave it to Hans Duda, you know? And I never saw it again. Actually, Hans Duda liked this environment. Okay, I think we're over time here. Srila Bhagavatam. Thank you very much.